Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss the conclusions I've drawn from studying American history. Conclusions you don't have to agree with, but as long as you're studying and you come to conclusions of your own that are variant to mine, that's great, as long as you're studying American history and are conversant in it. Um, so let's begin. We're going to talk about how the American Empire, which we've just conquered the continent, the white European descendants, your descendants of white Europeans have conquered the continent. We've taken over from the natives that were here first. We had the slaves have been freed. Our slaves, our African slaves, have been freed. They're suffering under social stigmas that would plague them for another 100 years. But the European American has conquered the continent. Now we're about to take our show on the road. So I'm going to begin. William McKinley had gone from mess sergeant to major during the Civil War and then became a lawyer after. In 1867, he settled in Canton, Ohio. In 1869, he became prosecuting attorney for Stark County and married Ida Saxton, the daughter of the town's leading banker. After the death of their two infant daughters, Mrs. McKinley became a lifelong invalid. After his former commanding officer in the Civil War, Hayes, became president, McKinley became a successful congressman. After many years, he became the Republican governor of Ohio, famous for his devotion to his sickly wife. In the 1896 election for president, he was up against William Jennings Bryan, who, like McKinley, advocated silver as sound money. This forced McKinley to change his stance on silver and promote gold as the proper standard for purely political reasons. It would hardly do to agree with your opponent, even if you had spent a great part of your political life voting for what he believed. McKinley won the election to be the 25th president, serving from 1897 to 1901. My wife's aunt, Henrietta Henny Mock, was an upstairs maid for Judge William R. Day, who served under McKinley as Secretary of State. He was instrumental in keeping the European powers. Well, I'm going to separate that. That was to my way. So McKinley was instrumental in keeping the European powers out of the Spanish American War. Uh, I'm sorry, let me back up. I'm reading my notes wrong. My wife's aunt, Henrietta Henny Mock, was an upstairs maid for Judge William R. Day, who served under McKinley as Secretary of State. He was instrumental in keeping the European powers out of the Spanish American War. There, thank you. She recalled the many times that McKinley's would come to Judge Day's house in Washington for dinner and how frail and sickly Mrs. McKinley was. She was given several items as keepsakes from the McKinleys, including a blanket and some china. My wife treasured the items that she inherited. An experienced politician, McKinley had a great deal of success in Congress, getting past the things he wanted, one of which being the higher protective tariffs to protect American business from foreign competition. The depression America was experiencing, started to turn around. As recovery set in, he set his sights on Cuba, which American presidents had wanted for decades, as we have mentioned earlier. Although a revolution against Spanish control had begun in 1895, Cleveland had managed to avoid American involvement. Popular sympathy was with the rebels, but McKinley was cautious in how to proceed. In May of 1897, he asked for $50,000 from Congress to save Americans stranded on the island. Two rival newspaper companies owned by William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer began using the Cuban situation as a means of gaining circulation of their papers. They sent reporters to the island and played up and even fabricated grisly stories of Spanish atrocities. And we're going to stop there for today, but I'm going to make a note. The gay 90s, a term unrelated to homosexual behavior, but related to frivolity and general lightheartedness in spite of the financial troubles of the time, was coined in 1926 to refer to this age America and the Western world were leaving. So just as you've heard that phrase, the gay 90s, if you studied history, just to let you know what that was from. Next, we're going to talk about the Spanish American War, very important event in American history as the American Empire goes abroad. And we'll stop there. Thank you very much for studying or listening.